Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is an interview. Now there's a couple different types of interviews. One is the man on the street when you're out there with the reporter and they have the stick microphone and you simply shoot those out on the street. The other one's going to be what we're covering here, which is a sit-down interview. Now we've chosen this room, and what I want to do is I want to talk about some of the ways you're going to set up every single sit-down interview, some of the basics that you're going to use for a sit-down interview. And if you can use these techniques, and if you can master this, then this is something that's going to help you in all of your packages later on, because about every single package you do, you're going to have a sit-down interview. So it's real important that you use these techniques and you start getting the right types of interviews. So the first thing I want to do is I want to introduce you to a couple of tools that we're going to use for all of these interviews. So the first thing I want to talk about for these sit-down interviews is the on-camera light. And this is your light. It's going to be in your camera bag, and it mounts right up here on the hot shoe. Okay, it just slides right in, and then you can screw it down to tighten it down. All right, and then this connector is the D-tap connector. Okay, that's what it's called, and it plugs into the back, and on different cameras it's in different positions, but once you get that plugged in the back, you can take your switch right here in the front, turn it on, and that's going to be your on-camera light. And it's real important that you use that on-camera light for these interviews because you want your interviews to look really good, you want them to be bright. Natural lighting will work when you're outdoors, that's okay, but when you get indoors you really need to use this on-camera light. I'll show you the difference when it's on, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's off, and you'll see the big difference. Now let's talk about the microphone and how you're supposed to get the sound for these interviews then. Okay, so this is going to be your lavalier mic. Now I always encourage people when you do a sit-down interview to take your lavalier mic and use that. It's very difficult for the reporter to have their stick mic and hold that close and then get that interview to look the way that it's supposed to look. You're always going to have that arm in there, and you really want your interviews to look professional, and you want the subject to be the focus. You don't want people to be noticing things like the arm, the stick mic, and you really want clean audio, especially if you're taking the time to set this up and they're sitting down with the reporter. You want to get very clean audio. So there's different ways to mount this. If it's a male, then I typically have them run the lavalier mic up their shirt and they mount it right up here. It's great when there's a polo shirt, just like I have one on now. It mounts on there really easy. Now when you need to mic up a female subject, it's different. You don't ask the female to run that up her shirt. What I typically do is I'll have them run that over their shoulders, and then it kind of comes around here and we'll clip it on their blouse or we'll clip it here. Yeah, you might see a little bit of that microphone cable coming up there, but at this level and for what we're doing, I think that that's a good start, and then you'll learn other techniques as you go on. But it's different than a male where we can just have them run it up the shirt and then clip it on there. Females, they wear different clothing, so I'll have them run it over there, or if they wear a jacket, it's great because then I can just clip it onto the jacket. Now what you want to watch for when you put on this lavalier mic is ideally you want that microphone to be pointing directly towards their mouth. So when you put that on there, you might have to adjust that clip one way or another, and you want to try and get that so that it's pointing up towards their mouth so that you pick up the best possible audio that you can. If it's off just a little bit, because it does happen sometimes, they're wearing clothing where you simply can't get it to point directly at their mouth, that's probably going to be okay if it's a little bit, but you certainly don't want to have it to where it's like at a 90-degree one direction or the other. And what will happen sometimes if you just ask the subject, hey, could you please put this on for me? They'll go ahead and they'll run it and then they'll put it on there, but they don't know that that microphone is supposed to be pointing at them. So they'll typically put it on any way that they can that is convenient, and then it might get you bad audio because they didn't put it on very well. Now the first thing you want to do when you get the subject sitting down is to determine how high your camera needs to go. What I really recommend, especially for people who are just starting out, keep the camera at eye level. So remember how we used to do our composition and we were setting things up outside and you kind of eyeball it first? What you want to do is you want to bend down and you want to look and determine how high that camera needs to go. And then take your camera lens and set it to that height, and that's going to be the first thing that you do when you start the interview. So once you get your camera set up at the proper height where you want it to be about eye level, next thing you're going to do is turn on your on-camera light. And you can see that that makes a difference. So when the person's looking at the reporter there, you get good light. If the light's off, you can tell that now you get some more shadows introduced. You want to have a nice clean image. You want the focus to be on that person. So we go ahead and we turn on our light, and then that gives us the image that we're looking for. We're going to do a sound check. We're going to have that lavalier microphone on there. We're going to check our levels, make sure we have good audio, and then we're going to go ahead and record. We're going to tell the reporter that we're ready. Now, just talking about interviews in general, one thing that I do is I make sure I talk to the reporter beforehand. It helps, and I let them know and say, hey, you know what, listen, could you just give me a couple minutes to get these things set up? And then they're like, okay, that's great. You know, they understand that it's going to take you a couple of minutes to get these things set up. A proper interview does take a couple minutes. We're certainly not going to waste people's time. We want to work efficiently, and we want to get moving and go through these steps. However, if we notice that there's no audio, if we're having trouble with our light, if we need to change a battery, maybe we got into the shoot and we realized our battery was low, it's much better to go ahead and fix those things before the interview starts. And then you can take care of that. You can be ready to go for the interview. It's well worth that extra minute or 30 seconds that it took. And if you talk to the reporter beforehand, they'll understand that the reason you want to take that extra time is because you want your interviews to sound and look good every single time. Now, if you're in the middle of an interview and let's say your battery starts to die, or all of a sudden you notice that the audio went bad, you should immediately stop that interview there. Or let that person who's doing the talking, let them finish that, and then before the reporter asks the next question, you should stop that interview right there and let them know that there's a problem, and go ahead and take care of that problem as quickly and efficiently as you can, because it's better to go ahead and fix the problem and get the correct audio, have the right lighting, or make sure your camera stays running if that battery was low, as opposed to letting them going on and then you have material that you just can't use. Because if you have bad audio, you simply can't use that. You need to make sure you have good audio and good pictures the entire time, and you want to correct your problems as they come up. Okay, so we have a very difficult lighting situation here that you're going to run into many times. This is the backlight situation where you have windows behind your subject and you're trying to set up an interview. So how can you handle this situation? I've seen students place somebody right here in these chairs, and then this whole background that's blown out. That's what we call it when it's just completely bright and we can't really see details in there. It's blown out. So what I would suggest we do is we take this light and make use of it, and then we put the subject over here in these chairs, and we put our camera back here. So now all that light's going to come in over our shoulders, and it's going to light the subject naturally, and then we can avoid that backlit situation where everything blows out. So let me show you what that looks like when we put the subject here. So you can see now that we took that really bright window and we made use of that light now. So sometimes when you're doing these interviews and things, it just requires you to take a minute and go, okay, what can I do to make this situation a little bit better? Do I need to move the subject? Do I need to place him somewhere? Now when I go into an interview, I typically know ahead of time without looking in the camera, but a lot of new students, when you're learning how to shoot, you might set up that camera first and then realize that the background's blown out. It's okay, you know what, just go ahead and stop that and say, hey, you know what, let me make an adjustment, and then you go ahead and move them over. There's nothing wrong with that. As you learn to do that, you'll start to notice those things even before you set up the camera. But always look at things like, is my background blown out? Can I adjust this, you know, make it a little bit better as I go? And then you make those changes, and it makes your interviews look great, and they sound good. The focus is on the subject where you want it to be. As you continue to learn about interviews and you start looking at the different interviews that are out there, one thing you'll start to see is this thing called cutaways, all right? And that's typically when you'll have an interview, and then during that interview, right in the middle, it'll cut to a shot of their hands, or it'll be a real tight shot of their face looking sideways, or there's even times when they'll have a camera like over the shoulder of the interviewer, and you see the reporter sitting there nodding their head as they ask these questions and the person's talking and stuff. Those are your cutaways. All right, the times that those are useful is when you have a package where you really don't have a lot of B-roll. There's times when you just get stuck. It's like, okay, we got to go to this place, we got to do an interview, and it's going to be a nice interview, a sit-down one, we got the lav mic on, but other than that interview, we're really not going to get a lot of B-roll. It does happen, it's a difficult shoot, but one thing that can help you is those cutaways. Now what I want to talk about is the right way to shoot those. Okay, first and foremost, please remember this. When you set up your camera and you shoot the interview, you know, you've set your height, you've got your good audio, you've got it framed the way that you want it. Once that interview starts, do not move off of the subject. Okay, go ahead and keep your camera on the subject at all times. Now remember that point, it's very important. Go ahead, get the whole interview shot. Okay, let them do their talking, the reporter will ask the questions and they answer. Stay focused on your audio. Stay focused on making sure the framing, you know, remains good in case they move to one side or the other a little bit. All right, get through the entire interview. Now, here's the key. All right, after the interview's over, you go ahead and you look at the reporter and say, hey, would you guys mind just sitting there for a few more minutes while I shoot some cutaways? Okay, notice what I said, after the interview is over. The reporter's done, they've wrapped it up, they've got everything they need. That's when you ask them, could you just sit there for a couple more minutes? I'd like to get a couple cutaways. Okay, so then the reporter will sit there and they'll talk with the person, and whatever they talk about is fine. That's the time that you can stop your camera, and then you move it over to the side and you get a real tight shot of that person's hands while they're sitting there, or you get that shot from over the shoulder as the reporter's nodding their head. They don't get those shots during the interview, during a news shoot, okay? Like on a 60 Minutes, they will have multiple cameras and they'll do those things during the interview. But when we're shooting news, we don't have that luxury of multiple cameras. So when the interview takes place, you stay on the subject and you continue to shoot it. Afterwards, you ask them to talk, and that's when you get your cutaways. And like I said, your cutaways can be hands, it can be the face, and it can be even an over the shoulder if you do that. When you get into the edit bay, you're really going to like that, because now you have some different things that help you cover up that interview. And if this person's talking and they have a really good soundbite at one spot, and then they have another really good one at a different place, and you need to join those two together, and the reporter wants to use both of them, your cutaways will help you out with that. They're a great bailout for that, and there's a great place to do them is after that interview. And here are interview tips to remember. Always use your on-camera light when you're shooting indoors. Use the lav mic for the highest quality audio. Keep your camera at about eye level when you're setting up that tripod. And stop the interview if a technical problem comes up. That's more important that you correct that and then proceed with the rest of the interview. And finally, shoot all cutaways after the actual interview. You always want to stay on the subject when you're shooting the interview. Afterwards is the time that you get your cutaways.